know, there's nothing I appreciate more than the emotion of the men and women in the arena. That's Juwan Gary from Nebraska. He's fouled out, and that's the end of it. You see the respect from that Iowa side. You see PBA showing their love for this guy, and I can barely get through this without crying myself. He gets to his coach, Fred Hoiberg, and whew, that's the good stuff, man. That is the best of sports, even in a moment of disappointment as Iowa wins that game. Senior.
Day by day, we get better and better. We get better and better. Till we can't beat beat. Till we can't beat beat. Won't beat beat. Won't beat beat.
Hey, everybody. Welcome in to Day by Day. We're back after a week off. I'm James, and I'm with Andrew. Andrew.
Hello.
It's good to see you, man.
You too. I missed everybody. The audience. I think it's been, 3 weeks for me, maybe? So
I think so.
Yeah.
Little program update. Mike is still a part of the show. We didn't fire him, but he's in baseball season. Coaches baseball at a high school. So Mike will be hit and miss through the spring months, and he'll be back at some point. And maybe he'll make a surprise appearance again. But you're back to the original two here with Andrew and me. But we got a lot to cover. We're gonna put a wrap on Husker basketball.
A tidy bow or a very sad bow on it.
Yes, the season is not over, but it is. We'll talk some Matt Rhule press conference, look forward to the spring, maybe talk about our favorite players to watch this spring for Husker football. As always, you can find the show at characterchronicles.com. Please subscribe on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, like, comment. It helps more people find the show. All right, let's start with Husker basketball. Super disappointing loss to Iowa. That's just how I watched the entire second half. I didn't really cheer. I didn't, I wasn't really frustrated. It was just like this isn't going to happen. What are your thoughts from the game?
Well, I have a question for you. What was harder to watch? Us lose the last game of football to Iowa or the last basketball game to Iowa? Because both pretty equally deflating, although football had already accomplished something that they were hoping
That's a
for,
great question. We were trailing at halftime on Sunday, but the games both felt very similar, right? In their own way, right? Basketball and the basketball way, and football and the football way. But that's a good question, man. I mean, I think football. I was angrier after the football game. I mean, this felt like it was just inevitable. It doesn't, and it didn't. I'm curious, did this change your opinion of Coach Hoiberg? Not just the game, but the way the season ended.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it'd be pretty natural to kind of feel a certain way, and just seeing how the team performed down the stretch. I also want to put it on some of the players too. I don't want to just put it on Fred, but it was just a slow that like a leak in the balloon, just a slow deflate. It kind of felt over the last 4 losses or so. It's disappointing. You want there was guys on that team that you feel for, like Bryce and Juwan, and to see Bryce kind of play the way he did in the last game was disappointing. So I'm gonna say it's a shared load. However, and I'm not gonna say hot seat for Fred, but going into next year, a little bit of a different perspective, I guess. So
I am fully in Fred's camp. I think that Nebraska, the administration, needs to devote financial resources to recruiting the best players. I think we can all agree that Fred did not get his primary targets from the portal last year. And I mean, you could see it on the floor, right? That said, I mean, when you look at it from that perspective, you're like, it's pretty amazing that they won 17 games and were on the bubble. So for as much as people are like, oh, coaching, like you lost those games, I'm like, man, I don't know if they were supposed to win that many games.
Yeah.
Coaching, Fred seemed to do a pretty good job. So here's the thing for me. This is kind of where I sit as the season ends. Most people would say, like, Nebraska needs to be kind of a 3 or 4 out of every 5 years in the tournament. Okay. So there are people who are like, I've seen enough of Fred. We're back to where we were the first year. I'm like, well, but we won't know that until after next year. Because what if they go back to the tournament next year? What if they bring an amazing class in, or really I've just been saying 2 guys. You need 2 guys, and then you need a quality third guy, and then you need players who know their role. So if Nebraska makes it back to the tournament, that's 2 out of 3 years. And then you go into the next year, like, man, what if you make it to the tournament? Well, that's 3 out of 4. So to say that Nebraska is just repeating patterns that they had, that Fred had in his first couple of years, I just think is premature. Let's get through next season. Let's see what they do in the postseason. I really hope the administration commits financially to get, I'll just say it, more talented guys here. Bryce and Juwan couldn't do it all. I think they have a good core. Obviously, Rink will be back. I think Burke and Essegian will be back. I've seen some people say, they might not be back. I mean, even Mike, you mentioned Burke, you see him as a transfer, and obviously Sam will be back. So, but you got a couple guys on the bench in Nick Janowski and Brendan Frager who will play, and Fred's already said that. So I think they just have to, I mean, we could talk about what I think their biggest needs are, or what you think their biggest needs are, but
I would say I really appreciated Fred's response. I think it was on Husker radio or something the other night. Just kind of reaffirming that I'm committed. I love this place. This place means a lot. Like, because one could start to wonder, because we've seen it with other coaches, is coaches start to feel like I can't win here or I don't have the support, or the fan base turns on me and I want out. Like, you really do feel, Fred. Yeah, let's call it what it is. Fred is a good basketball coach. He's one of the bigger names out there, who's had a rough go of it here certain years.
And I think he did. I mean, he transformed the way that he coaches.
Yes.
And the way that he put a roster together just 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And so, he's recruiting now it's really just, he's recruiting a different style of player. And I think he's probably rediscovering what he is as a coach. And so I think firing him, one, would be financially ridiculous as revenue sharing takes off and money has to go to players. Like, I can't remember who wrote about this, but like, I would rather have you take that money and put it into players. Find great players. It's like you get into a firing cycle, and it's like, well, you're going to be wasting your money paying 2 coaches, and you're still not going to have great to elite players who are in the market commanding top dollar, and so you still won't be competing.
And there's everyone likes to point out the angle every time you get a new AD. It's like, new boss, what's he think? What's he want to do? What direction does he want? From hearing Matt Rhule, because we'll get into it, Rhule has obviously high praise for the support that Dannon provides. I want to say, I'd like to think that Dannon, you see him at all these games, like, he's got to see all the ingredients are there. And I think he's smart enough to see the coaches there that there's some other things that are missing, and that's talent on the court. And I think Fred probably didn't have the ideal group he wanted this year as well. Maybe there were some misses in portal or whatever, but he did what he could with it. It's still disappointing. Still, I would say they didn't, live up to what their potential this year. It was an odd year of runs, but
Yep.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, to your point, I think Fred's a good coach. You know, they didn't lose games. I didn't feel like, so you could make the argument, well, they lost games because they weren't prepared to play. Okay, that's fair. But at what level do players have to accept responsibility, which you already pointed out, right? If Fred is drawing up plays to get guys open looks and they don't hit the shot, whose fault is that?
Yeah.
Okay. I get recruiting, and people are like, oh, well, Fred's the one that brought the players in. I can almost go on record by telling you, I mean, I am, that he did not have the financial backing through NIL to get the guys he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So you end up with guys who, like a point guard who shoots 23% from three.
Yep.
You end up with a post player who draws fouls a lot, but shoots 55% from the free throw line. You get Burke, who I like, but he just turned 20 and he's developing. You get
Connor, who was supposed to be the Tominaga replacement.
Yep.
It shows up pretty much cold most of the season. So
I think Connor, he hit about 39%, did what he was supposed to do, but didn't do more than that. Right. So, but like we go back, Andrew, like they didn't have rank mass. Like why did Casey have so many points in the paint last year? Because they had a big who could distribute from the top of the key. Yep. I think if you put Connor and Rink together, I think Connor's a different player.
Yeah.
But we had a big this year who, in Mia is like, you didn't want him to handle the ball. And, on defense, again, I just think didn't set his feet, didn't get vertical. He was too jumpy. And so it's like, yeah, you just didn't get the best possible players that you wanted. And it came together in a really, and it just produced a messy outfit.
Yeah, really. Yeah. You look at the comparisons. Also, I think Wiltshire's absence, it was massive.
Huge.
Because that guy was, sixth man of the year candidate in Big Ten. So Esijan essentially played that role and wasn't as effective. So then who do you have on the court at point? And it's Worcester, and so we lacked. I think Fred pointed out in that radio interview that we made 100 less threes this year than last year. So,
and again, I think Connor hit quite a few threes. I mean, close to the number Tominaga hit, but it was those other parts of his game. And again, I think it was the supporting cast that is primarily to blame. We had far fewer assists this year than we did last year. Just we didn't pass the ball as well. We didn't move as well. I want to believe Fred will get it fixed, and we'll find out. What would you say are your top, if you were like, hey, I can only hit on 2 portal roles or positions for Nebraska basketball, what would you say your top 2 priorities are for this team going into next year?
I think you got to find, we kind of joked on this pod throughout the year that Nebraska kind of lacked that assassin, that guy that just gets under your skin because he just goes out and hits the shots. And you could argue Bryce was that, but Bryce wasn't, Bryce is consistent, but and he was your obviously, first team, or shout out to Bryce for that. But
first team all Big Ten today.
Yeah. But I would say just that guy that, when other teams play, it's like, oh, don't let him get going. Don't,
Sure.
In those clutch moments, I can just, Iowa had him, Creighton had him, Michigan had him. So a guy that is just a shooter, makes the tough deep threes and some, with a hand in the face. And then you got to replace Juwan. So I think kind of the dogs, everyone wants to say he's that dog, and who's going to be that that guy that will get in there and not be afraid to swing elbows or take elbows to the face, whatever it might be. So that'd be what I'm looking at. Probably a forward and a shooting guard.
You think that the shooter could also be a point guard?
Well, that's true. I mean, Ulyss underachieved, Worcester underachieved, so we are in need of a point. But
I mean, we don't need him to be Steph Curry, but could he be somewhere in between Steph Curry and, I mean, somewhere in between Steph Curry and Raleigh Worcester. Like, can he, I would love a point guard that can shoot. That would be my top priority. Fred has really never had a great point guard. I mean, Alonzo Verge was okay. He was kind of out. He's still out of position, but Fred's really never had a great point guard here at Nebraska. I don't know why. Again, that goes back to what's going on in college basketball and the kind of the black market and getting top players. I would think if I was a point guard, I'd want to play for Fred Hoiberg. But here's the thing, Andrew, like college students, or high school students and college transfers, they don't care who Fred Hoiberg is.
Yeah.
I mean, he's old to them.
2014 was a long time ago. Yeah.
But money matters now. Money matters.
Yeah. So
I think Fred could develop anybody. I actually think Connor and Burke, if they stick around, are going to have quite the offseason of development working with Fred. Because remember, they weren't working with him last year. They came in summertime and into the lineup. I'm looking for them to make a big jump. I think Burke too, just growing into his body. I mean, think about being 19 and being 6'11" and trying to figure out. And then I also think there's a recency bias against Burke. I saw so many comments online where people were like, he's terrible. Like, he was in that Ohio State game that we won. He was incredible. And then he got hurt.
I think he also impacted the game in a lot of ways that didn't show up on stat sheets.
Agree.
Whether it was defense, rebounding.
Agree.
He's a versatile big. So a
lot of tip balls, hands in passing lanes. He's so lanky that I think he does a lot. And I hope he comes back.
Yeah,
I'm sure he will.
Him and Mast, as kind of your versatile bigs that can step out and shoot. Like that's a good duo right there.
Agree.
To build off of. So
agree. Well, now it's on to the crown. So it's on to the crown. We'll play in Vegas. We'll probably be the overall number 1 seed. Which let's be honest, it's better.
Yeah.
It's better than nothing. So it is what it is.
Hey, go put stuff on film, really, if you're like a Jawan and a Bryce.
Yes, man, I wish that red shirts could play in that game. College basketball, get your act together, do what football does, and let the young guys play. So, okay, we're going to talk football really quick. Baseball hammered Wichita State tonight. They got their first midweek win of the year. That's a big win because of how the season started. So, go big red baseball.
What do we do against? Did we win 2 of 3 against Washington, or did we?
No, we lost 2 of 3.
We lost 2 of 3.
We lost 2 of 3.
Oof, okay.
It was bad. We won't talk about that. Yeah. So we'll move on. Baseball's a long season. A lot of games left. Okay, so let's do a little football because spring football is about to start. And Rhule had his press conference today. I've only seen about half of it. I think you have as well. So what stood out from the presser to you?
I mean, in any Rhule fashion, it was very informative. A lot of insight, which you love.
He gives so much detail, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah. He can tell he enjoys it. He was tan. You can tell he'd been out probably
very
out
tan.
East Coast, sitting on the beach. But I know he's also working really hard to get ready for this season. But no, I feel like his tone, he just seems a lot more businesslike this year. And maybe that's that CEO, that kind of transition to CEO role. You hear a lot, him talk a lot about guys are older, guys are more developed. His coaching staff is more experienced. You hear the comparisons to things are like the NFL now. So I just got the tone and the feeling, and he talked a little bit about Pat Stewart, the new GM that he brought on into the team. That
Yep.
Just a very more a business-like mindset this year.
Hmm.
I thought an interesting note somebody brought up, asked if they were going to do that teams competition that they did during the spring
Yep.
last year, and
Yep.
he was like, he kind of poo-pooed it. He was like, "Oh, that was for that time and place." He goes, we'll do something a little different, probably focus more
Hmm.
on game management, procedural stuff, like
That's
those
good.
type situational stuff. So, yeah, I feel like he's kind of transitioning from like, I gotta kind of gain everybody's trust, kind of be. I mean, I think Rhule's always going to be fun and a player-oriented coach, but
Yep.
it feels like he knows this is year three. He's excited about his year
Yep.
three, and I think he's going to be very business-like about it. So,
I felt really similarly, and I thought that he in the press conference, he just kind of had this approach like, I trust my coaches. They're a little bit older. We've talked about that a few times. He doesn't have to coach them. In the past, he's talked a lot about like, I coach my coaches, they coach my players. And I think you're right. Like, he's like, I'm not coaching these coaches. They know what they're doing. Here's the vision that I want. Here's the system I've built. Coaches, you're going to go out and execute it. And I don't have to hold your hand or teach you what to do. So yeah, I felt like he was really at ease. He seemed really comfortable to me.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like he's really excited, but one of the media members asked a question like, a lot of people talk about, off-season championships and we win so many at Nebraska. Like, what do you think about that? And he just kind of was like, it's my job. It's my job in the off-season to get us basically to be the best that we can be.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of a funny question, kind of an unfair question, but.
So I made a note in the notes. I said, head scratching media question. Did you catch it? You did, James. It was
that was it. That was the one. Okay.
I just like, it felt like the kind of slimy media question. Like, let's get the coach to say something. Because I think he said, he goes, every year fans want to crown us, off-season national champs, but it doesn't pan out. He's like, what can you say to him this year that, separates this team? It was just like, he's looking for that hot take.
He goes, he was like, what?
It's like a stupid question. Move on. Yeah.
I will say another thing that stood out to me, and it shows me that Rhule pays attention. He listens to people. Mm-hmm. He said when local media people and others said you should hire Mike Eckler, I was like, I don't want to do it. I'll be honest with you. I don't want to do it. And I was like, wow, that is fascinating that he had people in his ear or in the paper or whatever he's reading, the internet, and he's reading stuff. And he's like, I don't want to interview him. I'm not going to hire that guy. And then he's like, and then I interviewed him and he was blown away.
Oh yeah. Hard not to be.
So what it shows me, two things. One, he listens and he observes, but two, and we've talked about this before, his humility to say, I didn't want to do this. Basically, he's like, it's kind of like when you tell a kid, like, hey, take out the garbage. I'm not going to take out the garbage now. I'm not going to do it. He had the humility to say, you know what? Yeah, like they were right. This guy's legit. I'm going to offer him a job. I think that's so cool.
Yeah. So I love it. I thought of a thought during that, and why I'm thinking about Scott Frost. I shouldn't be, because we need to move on. But
I know you are. Let's hear it.
I did kind of wonder, if Frost, because we know Frost was an offensive mind. We know that he could relate to players out there running the option with a helmet on and all that. He was kind of the player's coach. You wonder where, if he had the right pieces around him, the right, in today's college football, which is so much different than 3 years ago. If he had a GM, if he had coordinators, now a lot of that's on him. If he had coordinators that had some decent experience that weren't just his buddies, how would he be any more successful at this point, say in the year 2025 than he would have been in 2022 or 21. So because a lot's changed. If he wasn't the operations guy, he wasn't the most professional. He didn't listen to the media or the fans. If he
Yep.
had some of those characteristics that Rhule has shown,
Man, if
may
ifs
have
and
gone a little
buts were
different.
candy and nuts, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. And we'll
I mean,
see. He is a head coach now, so we'll see if some of the new world college football helps him.
yeah, I mean, he just seems so much more like a blue collar kind of coach. Like you said, I'm going to put on the helmet and run the play, rather than a CEO kind of person that Rhule is, right? To me, like if you had to put different coaches in different categories, Rhule is in the visionary camp, right? He's a visionary.
Yeah.
And we know that because he's talking about not doing a spring game and everybody follows him.
Yeah.
He's talking about what it costs to get a quarterback from the portal, and nobody else would talk about that.
Yep.
Right.
He's talking about the athletic department as a whole.
Right.
He's talking about football. He's talking about wanting to see the whole thing.
He's a visionary for the sport, for the sport, but also for sport. Like he is what Nebraska needs. And I think you kind of look back, hindsight's always 2020. You look back, you're like, yeah, Scott Frost actually wasn't what Nebraska needed,
right,
in a football coach. I don't know so much that Tom Osborne was that either. But again, different era. But Matt Rhule is what Nebraska needs now. As he said repeatedly, like, it's got to get down on the field, and now's the time. Do I think they're going to go? Do I think they're going to go 13-0? Probably not. But man, could you have a season where you get 8 and you get lucky in some, maybe 9-10 wins? Like, he would be crowned king if Nebraska won 10 football games this year. He would. He'd be king of Nebraska.
Yeah, I think that's where that thought came up when I thought of Frost. It was more like gratitude that we don't have Frost at this moment. Like every time you watch Rhule speak, you feel like you're glad he's out there representing Nebraska and all these major. He's on Pat McAfee's show, and he's getting shots thrown at him by Feinbaum, and I think that's a good thing for Nebraska. So we're
relevant.
Yep. So
the worst thing is indifference.
Yeah.
I don't want anybody indifferent with Nebraska football. Stay relevant. All right. Well, let's kind of end in the last segment here. Let's talk about who's on your radar for the spring in terms of newcomers. Who has to have a big spring? I know you gave this some thought. So who would maybe be your top, 2, 3, 4 guys that you're watching out for in the spring?
Yeah, I got to take a receiver. I think it's Dane Key. That seems an obvious one.
Yeah, he'd be my number 3.
Yeah, I really want to, and there was a mention of him today, but Williams Nowerney. I think it was Jason McCullough brought him up as someone that he's excited to see. He said he's put on weight. He's up to about 270 pounds. Seems like a bigger, you hear the comps to Randy Gregory, as far as the length and sort of how he plays. So he's also, I haven't seen any pictures of him on, Husker socials or anything like that. So he was a big time recruit coming out of high school and then just 1 year at Mizzou. So kind of a mystery one, but yeah, I think he's one that could jump off the screen when we actually get a glimpse of him. And I'll say not a newcomer, but he's new to the position. I gotta say, I'm excited to see Heinrich and see what he does at tight end. Because the hype is there. You hear Rhule even say, next level type stuff, and we see it. So I mean, I'm excited to see. We're definitely rooting hard for him. So
I like that one. What a great story. I appreciated Rhule talked about how he's just so grateful that Heinrich and his family trusted him and the coaching staff to stay. There might be other reasons why Heinrich stuck around.
We know
but,
those,
but I'm really glad he stayed. He loves Nebraska, right? And you just don't hear those stories all that often anymore. It's like, you loved your school, you loved your state, you loved your people and your community. That's what gets lost in this a lot. It's like, when you go to college, like these guys aren't machines. They're not robots. They are people. They're young humans who are trying to find their way in the world. And you get to college and, we did it. It's like you go to college, you're away from your home and you need to find your people. And when you're a football player, you find them on the football team and you forge these relationships. And man, to say, I'm going to leave and go somewhere else and start over again completely, it's a big risk. And I get that sometimes you need the money or you want the money. I get that. No judgment. But that doesn't mean it's not almost impossible to do well when you go somewhere, go to a new environment.
Yeah.
No, for me, I've said this, like no amount of money is going to cover up a loss of relationships or comfort in a community. So I'm grateful to Heinrich that he stuck around. I hope he has a huge year. He deserves it. He's earned it. He has earned it.
Yeah. And physically, I mean, he can, see him catch the ball and make plays. Like you see that type of player. I mean, as Rhule's right by pointing out the NFL, like that type of player is all over the NFL right now. And you imagine
100%.
him at Heinrich running the 40 at the combine next year. Like,
yep.
Yeah.
It's going to be awesome.
Yep.
All right. I had my number one is Rocco Spindler. Really just because of his demeanor, his disposition, kind of how he looks at the game of football and how much he wants to be a part of this program and this team. I mean, think about this for a second, Andrew. Like he ended the year on a team that beat Indiana, Georgia, Penn State, and then played in the final, the college football final. The guy has experience coming out his ears. He played on a championship program, even though, Notre Dame didn't win, but championship program. And so I just love what he brings. And then you throw in, so then my number two is the offensive lineman from Alabama, Elijah Pritchett. Like, so we have two power two, Notre Dame independent offensive linemen with starting experience on this line in 2025.
Yeah.
You could not ask for a better scenario for Donovan Rhule going into this year. You couldn't ask for a better scenario. So now it just comes down to, can they gel together and play as a unit? Because we know those great pipeline teams of the past, like they played as a unit, and that's what made them special. So then 3 for me would be Dane Key, and then 4 would be Dason McCullough. I just love his versatility, and I'm excited to watch him on defense. I think he could kind of be like a secret weapon for Nebraska on defense to unlock a lot of what they do in the back end because of how he rushes the passer. I think that's been the missing ingredient. I mean, we've had decent pass rushers at times, but it's been so predictable, right? Like, okay, third down, we know we know that you're blitzing, or at least that you're going to line up out wide, but like, man, can we get a pass? Can we get a guy who can play the run and the pass on first and second down? It really changes the defense. Yep. So I'm excited to see McCullough play. I think he'll be big for the defense.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are great. And I don't know if you caught what Spindler said about mat drills. I think that's encouraging to hear too. He was taken aback by how difficult they were, and then he made the comment. He goes, "Whoever that 105 ends up being, it's going to be the right 105." And so,
wow,
interesting to hear a player even talk about that. Of, guys that are going to be weeded out or not. So,
well, they have like 700 DBs on the roster.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
I mean, they're not all going to be on the team. They're not all going to play. So you got to weed them out, which is crazy to think about. It goes back to our conversation about what should they have one portal window and all that stuff. It's like, it's still chaos. And it sucks that there's going to have to be guys who basically took a semester of classes at Nebraska, and they will be somewhere else in the fall if they want to play football. So,
yeah.
All right, quick before we end. Congrats to Husker women basketball because they're going dancing. Let's not forget about them. I don't know if you got to watch them in the Big Ten tournament. They had they had a good win. Then they lost their quarterfinal match, but they played UCLA tough, and so I like this team. And man, talk about a coaching job that Amy Williams has done when Nebraska lost, two of their starters to injury. It's just incredible. And
losing
so they are
last
fun to watch,
year, too.
right?
Yep. Chaz Shipley.
Goodness. So I'm excited to see them in the tournament. I think they're shaping up to be a 10 seed, which isn't bad. It's like, if you're going to be in the back half, you might as well be a 10. We'll see if they can come away with a victory, maybe get to the Sweet 16. Who knows? So congrats to the Husker women on your name will get called on Selection Sunday. Amy Williams is doing a great job. I know I don't see it. I had some conversations on Twitter this week. People were saying, there are people who want Amy Williams fired. I'm glad I don't find those people on Twitter. They don't come across my timeline. But I'm like, man, she is a good coach, and she shows up. Her team show up in March. They went on that run last year and then almost beat Iowa in the championship game of the Big Ten tournament. So her team show up.
It's what you want. Yeah. I will say also, the University of Nebraska are playing in the NCAA tournament.
They are.
So go Mavs.
Okay. Okay. What do you want them to win a game before? They're probably going to be a 16 seed.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is interesting. I didn't know this. Automatic qualifiers can actually some of them may have to play in the play-in games at Dayton. I didn't know that. I thought if you were an automatic qualifier, you were in the tournament, because to me, I don't consider a win in Dayton a tournament win.
Tournament win, right?
If you win your conference tournament, which I still think is stupid that you get to go to the dance automatically because you win that tournament. Like, again, NC State is the poster child for this. They went to the Final Four. I don't care. They didn't deserve an automatic bid last year. They weren't that good, so they got hot in the tournament. That's another conversation. But I do think if that's still the rule, and if you win your tournament, you're in the dance. That's what they say. That's the rule. You should not have to go to Dayton.
Yeah, no, I agree.
You should get the full experience.
Yep.
But they might have to go to Dayton to play another 16 seed just to get into the tournament.
Yeah, and that would be frustrating because you want to be that 16 and go in first game playing the big boys, trying to get that upset.
What do you think?
Yeah, you asked the question. I'm gonna root for him. I won't feel.
I'm gonna root for him too.
I won't feel like it would negate Nebraska's eventual win, because it will happen. But to me, they're kind of separate conversations. But will it happen? We've been waiting 40.
We've been waiting 40 years. Kent Pavelka has been waiting like 72 years. How old are you, Kent? Okay.
He's gonna retire as soon as it happens too.
Man, he sent out a tweet to Kevin Kugler, who's doing the games at the Big Ten tournament, and he said, "Hey, give a shout out to the media corps at the tournament." And I was like, man, that just breaks my heart because Kent won't be there, and I want to listen to Kent Pavelka doing a few more basketball games, but
get it for him next year. Hey, okay. So since we're level-headed Husker fans and we care about kids and players and sportsmanship, I gotta give a shout out to the Hawkeyes players. Juwan means a lot, as a fan, watching him and seeing the emotion, and then to see Iowa players.
That was very cool.
Kind of in the moment, spontaneously giving hugs and high fives, and that was cool. So
I did not
Iowa players.
Tip of the cap if I had one.
Yeah.
I did not expect that. And that was just one of those spontaneous moments of, okay, I hate the jersey you're wearing. I hate those colors. Those colors just make me want to puke.
Yeah.
But what's underneath is pretty solid.
Yeah.
And that shows the true measure of a man. And so Iowa, well done. Well done. Because at the end of the day, man, it's like, we talk sports rivalries, and I will say that some of the worst burners in the world are Iowa Hawkeyes on Twitter. Like they are. But at the end of the day, we are just humans. We are just sports fans. We're just people who root for a logo. In a few months here, I guess not a few months, a year, when they do the Winter Olympics, is it the winter next? Whatever's next, we're going to shed Iowa, Nebraska gear, and we're going to all be wearing, United States gear, right? We're going to be cheering for each other. That kind of brings me back to my senses, sobers me up a little bit. It's like, yeah, you know what? We are not as, we're a lot more like than we are different. Right. So we're not as divided.
Yeah, it would have been easy, especially in maybe not so much. I mean, we're still a rival in basketball, but as far as fan bases hating on each other, would have been pretty easy to just give a bye-bye, sit down type thing when he fouled out.
For sure.
So it was definitely shocking to see him. So Iowa fans, be more like your basketball players.
For sure. It's a great moment. It was a great moment. All right. Well, we'll call it good there. We'll be back in a couple weeks. I think we'll be kind of in a every other week rhythm throughout the spring and through the summer once we get into heavier football talk. So just make that note. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Appreciate you. And as always, go Big Red.